Polls.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And we thank you for being here, Barnaby.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're cracking open a topic that lots of folks in commercial real estate might prefer to keep a bit murky. We're talking about how mobile home parks, MHPs, are really valued.
Yeah, it's interesting. Every seller comes in thinking their park is, the golden goose.
Exactly. But the moment a serious buyer pulls up a chair, pretty much the whole negotiation pivots on one single document. It might seem simple, but it's critical.
You're talking about the rent roll. I often call it the operational truth serum for an MHP. Forget the fancy brochures.
Right.
The rent roll. That's the raw, unfiltered pulse check of how that business actually runs day to day. And you listening, you really need to understand how to read between the lines there.
That's precisely it. A buyer isn't just looking at the seller's, let's say, hopeful projections. No, they immediately start a cold, hard forensic checkup on the park's actual history. You've called this the autopsy before.
It really is like an autopsy. Buyers pore over this thing like a radiologist looking at x-rays. They're systematically searching for fractures, signs of hidden problems, things the seller might not even know are there.
So our mission today, for everyone listening, is to perform this rent roll autopsy. We want to pinpoint exactly what buyers look for, what makes them walk away, sometimes even before they submit that first offer, that LOI.
Yeah, the letter of intent. We want to uncover the verifiable operational truth hidden in those numbers.
Okay, before we really jump in, let's lay out the basic diagnostic kit. When a buyer gets that spreadsheet, what are the, say, top 3 questions instantly running through their head?
Right. Fundamentally, they're looking for solid proof of consistent cash flow and, crucially, consistent enforcement. So, number 1, are tenants actually paying on time month after month?
Okay.
2, are the rents pretty uniform for similar lots? Or are they just scattered, all over the place? And the third one, this can be the really painful one. How many units are physically occupied but aren't actually paying rent? That's a big one.
Let's tackle that first killer then, delinquency. When a buyer sees that delinquency rate creeping up, maybe over 5% or so, what's the immediate thought? It's not usually bad tenants, is it?
Rarely. The immediate assumption, almost always, is this is bad management. That's where their head goes.
Okay, so high delinquency is just a symptom. What are the specific red flags underneath that signal? Poor management or maybe just weak systems, things that really erode confidence, especially for lenders.
Yeah, it's the inconsistency that absolutely destroys confidence. There are a few classic signs. They see the same, 5 or 6 names appearing late every single month. That screams lack of enforcement.
Right, no consequences.
Exactly. Or they see tenants who are paying only partial balances month after month after month. It basically looks like the manager is running an unauthorized loan service. But maybe the biggest killer, visually and psychologically. Handwritten notes scribbled on the ledger instead of clean entries from accounting software. Or just the word cash listed over and over with no clear, provable bank deposit trail.
Hold on, that handwriting thing. A small operator might just think it's easier, right? But the buyer sees that and immediately thinks, what? Chaos.
Yeah.
Lack of control.
Precisely. It signals the records could be easily changed, maybe manipulated. And here's the critical point. A seller might be kind. They might let things slide for a tenant they know. But the bank, the lender financing the deal, they have zero tolerance for a lazy or chaotic ledger. Discipline has to come first.
Discipline, that's the key word. Okay, let's move to the second big indicator, turnover. High turnover obviously signals instability. Low turnover suggests, a stable community, predictability.
Yeah.
How does the rent roll show this, and what's it telling the buyer?
Turnover hits the buyer on 2 fronts, risk and expense. If you see a lot of churn, it suggests management probably has weak tenant screening. They're letting problematic tenants in, then dealing with evictions or skips.
Okay.
Plus, every time someone moves out, it costs money. There's cleanup, maybe repairs, marketing the empty lot, and definitely lost rent while it sits vacant. It all adds up fast.
Can you give us a quick example? Put some numbers on that instability so we can really picture the impact.
Sure. Let's visualize it. Say you've got a 50-lot park, pretty standard size. But the rent roll shows 10 move-outs over the last year. That's a 20% churn rate.
Wow, that's high.
Extremely high. What that tells a buyer is that the park's entire income base essentially resets every 5 years. There's no predictability there. How can you reliably project future income when your customer base turns over completely that often?
So you're not buying a steady income stream. You're buying a constant, costly process of finding new
You
tenants.
got it. Which is why a stable, even kind of boring rent roll is actually your best marketing tool. You're selling stability, predictability, something institutions value highly.
Okay, let's shift gears to what you called spreadsheet chaos. This is the rent consistency issue. It's interesting, buyers often don't mind low rents too much.
No, because they see potential upside there. They can raise them.
Right, but they do panic when rents for similar lots are all over the map.
Yeah.
Why does that inconsistency spook them so much?
It boils down to legality and enforceability. Imagine a buyer looking at the roll. Lot 101 pays $300. Lot 102 next door pays $350. Lot 103 pays $290. And there's no obvious reason the lots are the same size, same hookups.
Okay.
The buyer immediately thinks, what was the previous owner doing? Were there handshake deals,
Yeah.
favoritism, maybe non-standard leases? They worry that if they try to standardize rents, say, bring everyone up to $350,
They could face pushback. Maybe even legal challenges from the tenants paying less, claiming it's arbitrary or discriminatory?
exactly the risk. They assume the worst-case scenario, which is that standardizing rents will be difficult, costly, or maybe even impossible without creating huge resident friction. Consistency equals confidence, inconsistency equals risk, and risk always means a discount.
So if the rent roll looks like a random number generator...
Yeah, like a slot machine.
Yeah.
The buyer's going to pull that lever and slash the price. They have to factor in that uncertainty.
Which brings us to the defense mechanism, the collections report. This isn't just more paper. This is the proof, the evidence that backs up your asking price.
Absolutely.
Ah.
If you want top dollar, your collections report needs to be, well, bulletproof. There are 4 key things I always tell sellers. 1, export it directly from real accounting software. No manual edits, no Excel tinkering,
Needs to be verifiable.
verifiable and systemic. 2, it needs to show a full 12 months of payment history for every single tenant. Don't cherry pick the good months.
Okay.
3, the report needs to highlight consistency in enforcement, even if payments weren't always perfect. Show the late fees were charged, notices went out,
Show the system works.
show the system worked, and finally, the absolute non-negotiable. The total deposits shown in that report must reconcile exactly with the park's actual bank statements for that period.
That reconciliation matching the books to the bank, that's the ultimate trust signal, isn't it?
It is. It proves the reported income actually hit the bank account.
But let's talk about the flip side. What are those common seller excuses, the ones often framed as being nice, that just scream operational mess to a buyer?
Oh, they almost always substitute a story for a system. You hear things like, oh yeah, Bob in lot 12, he always pays, he's just, sometimes a week or 2 late. Or we don't really charge late fees, we try to be understanding, build community. It sounds nice, right? Empathetic.
Yeah, sounds reasonable on the surface.
But a buyer hears that and translates it instantly to, this business has no teeth, there's zero effective enforcement, and I will inherit all these collection headaches. They hear chaos, not kindness.
Okay, this next part is crucial and often a shock to sellers. We need to really slow down and unpack the math. Buyers value the park based on collected income, the reality, not the gross potential income, the fantasy number.
This is the painful truth, the real cost of weak collections. Sellers often just don't grasp how every uncollected dollar gets magnified, like permanently in the valuation. Let's run through the math slowly so it sinks in.
Okay, let's do it. Let's say a part should gross $120,000 a year based on the rent roll.
Right, that's the potential income.
Right.
But a rent roll autopsy, looking at the actual collections report and bank statements, reveals they only collected $108,000. So there's a $12,000 shortfall for the year.
Okay, $12,000 didn't come in.
Now, the buyer isn't just thinking, okay, income was down $12K this year. They're going to value the entire park based on that proven collected income of $108,000.
Yeah.
That's the real number they can bank on.
So that $12,000 is lost revenue for that year. But how does that translate into such a massive hit on the overall price? You mentioned the cap rate before. Maybe explain briefly what that means here.
It's brutal because the buyer is buying a future stream of income, right? Not just last year's performance. The capitalization rate, or cap rate, is essentially the annual return the buyer expects to get on their investment for that type of property in that market. Let's say it's a 9% cap rate market.
Okay, standard enough.
The buyer assumes, logically, if this owner couldn't collect that $12,000 this year due to weak systems, they probably won't collect it next year either, or the year after. The problem is systemic, not a one-off.
So the $12,000 shortfall isn't just a one-time hit. It's perceived as a permanent reduction in the park's earning power.
Exactly. It's baked into the future expectation. So to calculate the reduction in value, You take the annual lost income and divide it by the cap rate. So $12,000 divided by 0.09.
That comes out to, wow, $133,333.
A massive $133,333 reduction in the purchase price, just from failing to collect $12,000 consistently. Every single dollar you don't collect gets multiplied by the inverse of the cap rate and slashed from the value, essentially forever. It's a permanent scar on the asset's price.
That is profound. It completely changes how you should think about collections. It's not just admin, it's core value creation or destruction.
Absolutely.
So let's pivot to the solution. If a seller wants to avoid that haircut, if they want a professional, institutional level price, they need an investor-ready rent roll. What does that actually look like structurally?
It needs to look professional, systematic. Formatting is key. You need clear, consistent columns. Lot number, tenant name, their move-in date, the current rent amount, what security deposit is on file, and any outstanding balance due. Clean, simple, uniform.
What about the homes themselves? Distinguishing between park-owned and tenant-owned seems critical for risk.
Oh, absolutely vital. You must clearly differentiate tenant-owned homes, TOHs, from park-owned homes, POHs. Big difference. POHs mean the park owner is also a landlord for the structure itself, dealing with maintenance, repairs, CapEx.
More responsibility, more cost potential.
Right. TOHs mean you're just renting the land, which is the cleaner, lower-risk model most buyers prefer. That status needs to be crystal clear for every single lot on the roll. Maybe use color coding or separate columns.
So visually separate the lot rent from any potential home rent or payment if there are POHs involved. Make it obvious.
Yes. And as we said before, the final, crucial piece. The totals have to tie out. The total rent collected shown on that rent roll summary must perfectly match the income line on your profit and loss statement, and that must match your verified bank deposit records.
It all has to reconcile.
If you hand a buyer a messy, inconsistent spreadsheet, you're basically inviting a lowball wholesale offer. Hand them something clean, professional, reconciled. You set the stage for a serious institutional level valuation.
That makes perfect sense. It's a psychological signal as much as a financial one. Okay, let's wrap up with what you call the Rhino rule. Buyers aren't naive. They don't expect perfection. They know stuff happens. People pay late sometimes. But what they do demand is honesty, transparency.
That is the absolute key. Don't try to hide the late payers or sanitize the history. A savvy buyer will see right through that, or worse, assume you're hiding even bigger problems. The goal isn't to show perfection.
It's to show the process.
Exactly. Show the process. It's okay if Mrs. Jones in Lot 5 was late 3 times last year, as long as you can show the documented steps. Notices were sent on time, late fees were assessed according to the lease. Maybe even the initial steps of eviction were started if necessary. That's discipline.
Proving the system was followed, even if the outcome wasn't always perfect payment on the first, keeps the valuation intact because it demonstrates control.
Correct. You simply cannot fake a collections history. You can only demonstrate that you have systems and you follow them with discipline. Ultimately, that rent roll tells the story. Does this business run on verifiable systems or just on anecdotes and excuses?
That really is the bottom line. So the big takeaway for anyone listening, especially potential sellers: before you spend money polishing the park itself or printing glossy brochures, polish your books. Shine up that rent roll and the collection process.
The real bankable value isn't the number you wish you collected. It's what you demonstrably did collect, month after month, on time, backed by documentation and consistent enforcement.
The operational truth is always right there in the ledger.
Always.
Okay, that leaves us with a final thought for you, the listener, and this applies way beyond mobile home parks. Given that inconsistency is such a killer of confidence, take a moment and think. What element in your business, your operation, your workflow, whatever industry you're in, is currently functioning like one of those handwritten notations? What fuzzy area, what lack of clear process might be subtly eroding trust or undermining the perceived value of what you do? Something to audit and maybe fix this week. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.